From The Matrix Revolutions pushing for a diverse cast and characters to deconstructing Neo and the hero myth in the second part of the 2003 movie, this is why the Matrix sequels are underrated masterpieces. Imagine it's 1999. The Matrix casually swoops in and transforms the landscape of action cinema forever. It was a huge risk for Warner Brothers at the time. They were dropping a little over $60 million to make a movie that they weren't sure would even do well. That's a little over $115 million in 2023. But their gamble paid off, and The Matrix became a cornerstone of modern sci-fi films. Its influence reached far and wide, and people who watched it became obsessed with simulations, artificial intelligence, black trench coats, and cool sunglasses. But Warner Brothers made a fortune from the film, so of course they wanted to produce a sequel and capitalize on the hype. I get it. Studios have to have studios. But this decision was met with negative reactions. Fans argued that the first movie wrapped up the story neatly without feeling bloated. It was a perfect standalone film. Neo achieved self-actualization and learned that he can manipulate the system any way he wants. Honestly, the Wachowskis could have hung up their trench coats and called it a day. But people said that there was room for expansion. Neo won the battle against the agents, but the Matrix was still alive, and the rest of the population was still under its control. Enter Reloaded and Revolutions. They expanded the existing lore in new and interesting ways while keeping the sci-fi action core that made it so popular. There were new and more diverse additions to the cast, and they weren't just for show. Characters like Niobe, Seraph, and Sati were incredibly important to the storyline, actively helping Neo save Zion. Seraph became a fan favorite because of his no-nonsense attitude and exceptional fighting skills. He went toe-to-toe with Neo and hit a stalemate. Not everyone can do that. Niobe, on the other hand, is a great example of a strong female protagonist who isn't overshadowed by her male peers. She's a badass warrior who's killed at least one agent, survived many run-ins with the Merovingian thugs, and maneuvered the Hammer hovercraft in a way no one's ever done before. There's also a depth and vulnerability to her, especially in Revolutions, that shows you how, underneath all that badassery, she's still a human being. She's got feelings for Morpheus, but is also bound by her duty to protect Zion at all costs. I've got to say, Jada Pinkett Smith portrayed the little details brilliantly, but aside from the talented cast, one of the most interesting parts of the series is its exploration of thought-provoking philosophical concepts. I know the sequels didn't get a lot of love when they were released, but hindsight is always 20/20. The problem is that fans were expecting something as revolutionary and influential as the first movie, and you can't blame them for that. Like I said earlier, the first one was a great standalone movie that didn't really need a sequel. So when you opt to make one, you've got to make sure you meet or exceed expectations. But a lot of people look back and agree that Reloaded and Revolutions didn't deserve the harsh criticism. They encourage you to think about the difference between free will and predestination, between morality and choice, and between reality and illusion. In Reloaded, Neo is forced to decide between Trinity and the fate of the world. The architect gives him the illusion of choice. He points to two doors and says that one will save Zion and the other will save the love of his life. I say illusion of choice because there's no way Neo would sacrifice Trinity in exchange for Zion. He couldn't trust the architect and didn't know if an AI created by machines would keep its word. So it's not really a choice, but manipulation. The architect knew that he'd go for the door that leads to Trinity. This makes you think about whether humans really have a choice about anything, doesn't it? Do you choose your own destiny, or has it already been predetermined by millions of external factors? The series excels at encouraging these types of discussions. Like, how do you keep faith when everything points to nihilism? The architect tells Neo that his existence is the result of an anomaly. That is, he was the result of a mistake in the system. The machines used the Oracle's prophecy to manipulate the people and help reset the Matrix for its next cycle. So what's the point of believing in the one if it's all meant to reboot anyway? I'll dive more into this later, but my point is that Morpheus's belief was finally rewarded in the Revolution. It tells you that belief can have a significant impact on the outcome of certain events. He didn't need the Oracle to tell him that the prophecy was real, and he didn't need to understand it to have faith. He believed that Neo would save the people of Zion from extinction, and that's exactly what he did. It's one of the most powerful and memorable moments in the series, and the best part is that all its philosophies and moral conundrums are wrapped in CGI-heavy action set pieces. A lot of people went to the theater because the sequels offered more incredibly choreographed martial arts sequences. The first one had plenty of iconic fights between Neo and Smith, but Reloaded and Revolution significantly increased the scope and scale of the action. The highway chase and burly brawl in Reloaded, and the final battle between Neo and Smith in Revolutions are some of the most iconic fight scenes in cinematic history. But fans criticized it heavily for being fake and video game-like. Neo and Smith's skin was too smooth, and the cloth simulation, particularly in the coats, was really bad. But there's a genius in-universe theory that explains why the visuals look so fake. The Matrix might be a revolutionary machine-built simulation, but that doesn't mean it's got unlimited RAM. The more Smiths arrive on the scene, the more they need to work to render frames. It's literally like a video game. You might have noticed that if there are too many particles or explosions in the scene, the frame rate suffers, and the visuals get worse, so the game can continue running optimally. That's exactly what happens when you pit Neo against 1,000 Smith clones, and this is why the sequels deserve more praise. The fact that people still come up with theories to explain how the Matrix works and why it bugs out is a testament to the franchise's enduring legacy. It's a gift that keeps on giving, and I'm sure that if you do a marathon right now, you'll notice details that you missed during your first watch. One detail that comes up very often is the trans metaphor. Wachowskis, who are both trans women, look back on their work through a trans lens. The entire series is an allegory for identity, transformation, and acceptance. The original movie, for example, is about Neo's discomfort and alienation with the name Thomas Anderson. He goes through a rebirth in the beginning after accepting the red pill from Morpheus and learning to accept his body and his mind for what they are. In the end, he embraces his identity as the One and transforms into the hero he knew he could be. The sequels continue the themes of transformation and self-image. Agent Smith is a great example of someone who refuses to accept who they are, even after they're unplugged. His journey through the series is one of self-hatred. It destabilizes everything and hurts everyone around him. That's why he can't stop hunting Neo. Neo accepts his identity and continues evolving, but Smith can't, so he rebels against everything. It's why their big battle in Revolutions is so epic. I'm not saying that the sequels are perfect and don't need criticism. Like, obviously, they're not perfect, and the criticism is fair and warranted. The pacing could have used a lot more work. The final hour of Revolutions could have been tweaked for a better finale, and they should have simply waited for technology to improve so they could do better CGI fights. But they're still awesome movies that refuse to be the conventional action flicks of the early 2000s. For one thing, the ending is very bittersweet. Zion is saved, and its war with the machines is over, but the cost is Neo and Trinity's lives. The trilogy doesn't offer a happy ending, and it was only recently that Resurrections concluded the story with a neatly wrapped bow. But of all the things I've said, the most unconventional thing about the trilogy is how it deconstructs the hero myth. I said earlier that there might not be a point to the prophecy if everything reboots. The architect literally tells Neo that he's an eventuality, which means that the program anticipates his creation. By the second movie, there had been 6 versions of the Matrix, and the architect knew from day one that Neo would be the anomaly that everyone considers a messiah. The question is there a point to his sacrifice? If the machines already know he's coming, isn't his struggle pointless? The movies don't offer an answer and leave it up to the viewer, which is why, decades later, the world is still talking about it. And if that doesn't prove that the sequels are underrated, I don't know what will. So from deconstructing Neo and the hero myth in The Matrix Reloaded to the second movie's push for a diverse cast and characters, that's why the Matrix sequels are underrated masterpieces.